In 1868, a 29-year-old trader in Bombay started a company with 21,000 rupees. Today, the business that grew out of that company generate more revenue in about 9 days than many Indian states collect in taxes in an entire year. This single group builds the chips inside your phone, makes the steel in your building, brews the tea in your cups, runs the hotel you stayed in last vacation, insures your family, and might even fly you across the world, often without you realizing all five are connected. This is the story of the Tata Group. 21,000 rupees to over 15 lakh crore in annual revenue. 5 generations, 158 years, and buried inside the story is something about money and ownership that almost nobody outside India's boardrooms fully understands. Once you do, it'll change you and it will change how you think about building wealth that actually lasts. So let's start at the very beginning. The founder who never saw his own dreams come true. Okay, so it's from the timeline of 1868 to 1904. So Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata was born in 1839 into a Parsi family of priests in Navsari, Gujarat. The first in his family to choose business over the temple. At 20, he joined his father's small export trading firm and was sent to Hong Kong, where he learned the brutal, high risk world of 19th century international trade. By 1868, at age of 29, Jamshedji had saved 21,000 rupees. With that, he started his own trading firm. His first real move was almost accidental. He bought a bankrupt oil mill in Bombay, converted it into a cotton mill, and sold it to 2 years later for a profit. Then, in 1874, he set up a much bigger textile mill, not in Bombay, the obvious choice, but in Nagpur. Everyone thought he was making a mistake. That mill became one of the most successful in India. But here's what made Jamshedji different from almost every other merchant of his time. He wasn't just chasing profit. He had four dreams for India: build a world class steel industry, build a grand hotel that could rival anything in Europe, and found a world class institute of science and bring hydroelectric power to the country. So he personally lived to see only one of these come true. The Taj Mahal Palace Hotel opened in Bombay in December 1903, India's first truly luxury hotel. Jamshedji died the following year in 1904 in Germany without ever seeing his steel plant, his science institute, or his hydroelectric dream become reality. He died without seeing three of his four dreams come true, and his sons built all of them anyway. And that's where the story starts to get really interesting, because what happened next is a masterclass in something almost no founder ever gets right: building something that outlives you. So let's see. The sons who finished the dream, 1904 to 1938. So Jamshedji's eldest son, Sir Dorabji Tata, took over as chairman. Over the next 3 decades, he and his brother Ratanji methodically completed every single one of their father's unfinished dreams. First, steel. On a remote stretch of land in what is now Jharkhand, Durabji built the Tata Iron and Steel Company, known today as Tata Steel. The township that grew around the plant was renamed Jamshedpur in honor of the father who never saw it. Tata Steel would go on to become one of the largest steel producers in the world. Second, power. Sir Durab built Western India's first hydroelectric plant, the business we now know as Tata Power, India's largest integrated power company. Third, education. 5 years after Jamsetji's death in 1911, the Indian Institute of Science opened in Bangalore, funded by Tata money, and still today one of India's most prestigious research institutions. And along the way, the group also took its first step into the global stage, opening Tata Limited's office in London in 1907. Decades before, going global was even a phrase in Indian business. Notice the pattern. Within about 30 years of Jamshedji's death, his sons had delivered steel, power, and education. Three of the biggest, slowest, most capital investive bets imaginable. Not quick wins, multi decade infrastructure plays funded across generations. Keep this in mind, we'll come back to it. Next, let us get into part 3, that is, the 53-year chairman shaped modern Indian business from timeline 1938 to 1991. So, yeah, this is what like talking about. So, what happened here is like very unimaginable. So, what happened here is that in 1938, a 34-year-old named Jahangir Ratanji Dada Boy Tata or JRD Tata becomes the youngest ever chairman of Tata Sons. He would hold that position for the next 53 years. So think about that. One person steering this entire group for more than half a century through the end of British rule, independence, partition, decades of restrictive economic policy, right up to the edge of liberalization. So, under JRD, Tata launched businesses you almost certainly interact with today, often without realizing they are part of the same group. Tata Motors. So, India's largest automobile manufacturer, TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. Founded in 1968 and today the single most valuable company in the entire Tata Group. Next, we have Titan, watches and jewelry. Then Voltas, air conditioning and engineering. And Air India, which JRD founded as Tata Airlines back in 1932 and which he personally piloted on its very first flight. JRD's guiding philosophy became famous as Think Beyond Profit. Inside Tata, that wasn't just a slogan, it meant building hospitals, schools, and research institutions alongside factories decade after decade. In 1992, JRD became one of the very few business leaders in India or Indian history to receive the Bharat Ratna, the country's highest civilian honor. By the time JRD stepped down in 1991, Tata was a sprawling, deeply respected but loosely run empire. Dozens of companies, each operating almost like its own kingdom. The man who took over next would change that completely and became the most recognizable face Tata has ever had. That is all. So the architect, the insult, and the car that failed. 1991 to 2024 is the timeline. So Ratan Naval Tata became chairman in March 1991, the exact year India tore up its old economic playbook or, and opened to the world. So he lost his parents early and was raised by his grandmother, a famously strict matriarch. So his first job wasn't glamorous. It was governance. JRD's Federation of Kingdoms meant individual company heads ran their businesses almost independently of the parent. Ratan Tata spent his early years quietly increasing Tata's son's shareholding across group companies and in 1996 introduced something deceptively simple but financially brilliant, the brand subscription scheme. From now on, every company using the Tata name and logo would pay a fee for it, turning the brand itself into a revenue generating asset. So, like once the house was in order, Ratan Tata went on an acquisition run nobody accepted from an Indian company. Tetley Tea in 2000, Daewoo's truck businesses in 2004, and the European steel maker Corus in 2007. At the time, the largest overseas acquisition ever made by an Indian company, instantly making Tata Steel one of the largest steel producers on the planet. But the acquisition everyone remembers has a backstory most people don't know. In 1999, Ratan Tata and his team flew to Detroit to pitch for on taking over Tata's struggling passenger car business. According to multiple accounts, Ford's executives weren't just uninterested. They reportedly questioned why Tata had even entered the car business if it didn't know what it was doing. Tata's team flew home empty handed. 9 years later, in 2008, the call went the other way. Ford, battered by the financial crisis, was looking to sell Jaguar and Land Rover, two iconic British brands it had bought for billions in late 80s and 90s. Tata Motors bought both for $2.3 billion, less than half of what Ford had paid for Jaguar alone a decade earlier. So, Ford paid more for Jaguar alone in 1989 than Tata paid for Jaguar and Land Rover combined in 2008. So, at that time, analysts thought Ratan Tata had lost the plot. Tata Motors stock fell nearly 30%. Rating agencies downgraded the company, and yet within a few years, Jaguar Land Rover wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, eventually accounting for more than half of Tata Motors' total unit sales and tens of billions of dollars in annual revenue. So the expensive distraction became the engine. That same year, 2008, Ratan Tata also unveiled what he called the people's car, the Tata Nano, priced at roughly 2,500. So the idea came from watching a family of four balanced precariously on a single scooter and wondering if there was a safer, affordable alternative. It was genuinely one of the most compassion driven product ideas in modern Indian business history, and it failed. Not because the engineering was bad, but because of marketing. Branding the Nano as the world's cheapest car made it, in a status conscious market, the car nobody wanted to be seen driving, and a few high profile safety scares. And by 2020, the Nano was quietly discontinued. Same chairman, same year, one acquisition became a $30 billion plus engine. One product born from real compassion became a marketing case study. We are including the Nano on purpose. Most inspirational business videos only show you the wins. But if you are here to learn finance and business, the Nano is just as valuable a lesson as Jaguar Land Rover. Sometimes the right idea, built with right intentions, fails because of positioning, not product. So, one more story from this era says everything about who Ratan Tata was as a leader. During the brutal 2008 financial crisis, with companies worldwide announcing mass layoffs, Ratan Tata refused. His message to employees was simple: "We are in this together and we'll get out of this together." Ratan Tata officially retired as chairman in 2012, briefly returned as interim chairman during a boardroom crisis in 2016 to 17, and, remained chairman emeritus, effectively the group's moral compass, until his death on the 9th of October to 2024 at age 86. His passing triggered something close to a national day of mourning, and he left behind a Tata Group that was no longer just an Indian company with global ambitions. It was genuinely global conglomerate, and the person chosen to lead its next chapter wasn't a member of Tata family at all. And this brings us to the part 5, that is the first outsider to run the empire and a $14 billion bet on India's future. uh, the timeline comes from 2017 to present. Okay, so yeah, so this was all about it. So yeah, so semiconductor fab construction footage, Air India aircraft on a runway, and EV battery renders. So in January 2017, Natarajan Chandrasekaran, known as Chandra, became chairman of Tata Sons. For the first time in group's history, the person at the very top wasn't a Tata. He'd spent 30 years at TCS, 8 of them as its CEO, before taking the top job. So under Chandra, the group has made some of its boldest bets since the Ratan Tata era, and one of them closes a 69-year loop. Remember Air India, the airline JRD Tata founded in 1932 and personally flew? The Indian government nationalized it in 1953. In 2022, under Chandra, the Tata Group bought it back. The airline JRD built came home. So, but the bet that might define this entire era is happening in Gujarat and Assam. Tata Electronics is investing roughly $14 billion to build India's first major semiconductor fabrication plant in Dholera, Gujarat, plus a chip assembly and testing facility in Assam, with Intel, Analog Devices, and Japan's ROHM among the global partners signing on. Tata's electronics arm is already responsible for a meaningful share of India's iPhone manufacturing. This is Tata trying to do for Indian semiconductors what Jamsetji once tried to do for Indian steel. Build from scratch an industry the country doesn't yet have on a multi-decade bet. Alongside this, a battery gigafactory through a venture called Agratas, a major EV push that recently attracted a $1 billion investment from global private equity firm TPG, and Tejas Networks, building out telecom and defense electronics. So here's the number that tells you whether all this is working. The 5 years under Chandra's leadership through 2025, the Tata Group's revenue nearly doubled and its net profit roughly tripled. While the group invested around rupees 5.5 lakh crore into these new bets, in late 2025, Tata Trusts did something it had never done before. It waived its own retirement at 65 policy to give Chandra a historic third term as executive chairman, running through 2027 specifically, so he could see these long gestation projects through. And to be clear, not everything is profitable yet. In 2026, Chandra laid out a 3-year plan to the board to bring some of these newer ventures, including Air India, the digital businesses, and the semiconductor arm, toward profitability. Tata Electronics has already crossed 1 lakh crore rupees in revenue and reached break even. The others are still on the journey. This brings us to the part of the story that most people, including a lot of finance YouTubers, get completely wrong. So, moving to the next part, who actually owns the Tata Group? The twist. So, quick question. Where do Ratan Tata or now Noel Tata rank on India's rich lists? Next to names like Ambani or Adani? The honest answer is nowhere close. And that's not because the Tata empire is smaller. By combined value, it's arguably bigger than almost anything else in India. The reason is structural, and it's the single most important thing to understand about this entire story. Every major Tata company, TCS, Tata Motors, Tata Steel, Titan, all of them is ultimately controlled by one private company, Tata Sons. And roughly 66% of Tata Sons itself is owned not by the Tata family but by Tata Trusts, a group of philanthropic charitable trusts, the two largest of which were set up by Jamsetji's own sons over a century ago. In practice, this means that when profits flow up from TCS or Tata Motors to Tata Sons, a huge share of that money is by structure destined for causes like education, healthcare, livelihoods, arts, and culture, rather than any individual's personal bank account. So Tata Sons itself isn't publicly listed. Its own net worth grew from roughly 43,000 crore rupees in 2018 to about 1,49,000 crore rupees in 2025. And most of that growth by ownership structure belongs to charity. After Ratan Tata's death in 2024, his half brother Noel Tata became chairman of Tata Trusts, making him structurally one of the most powerful people in Tata ecosystem, while controlling almost none of that wealth personally in the way you might expect. So, the richest family in India isn't actually that rich, their company is. So it's also worth being honest that this unusual structure isn't free of tension. Through 2025, there's been real public friction between Tata Trusts and the Tata Sons board, partly fueled by regulatory pressure for Tata Sons to eventually go public, which would reshape this entire ownership arrangement. Even a century and a half old governance model isn't immune to growing pains as the business evolves. And that, too, is a lesson worth sitting with. And this brings us to the next chapter, the empire by the numbers. So let's zoom out and look at where uh, that 21,000 rupees actually ended up based on financial year 2025 figures. So group wide annual revenue, if you see, it's roughly 15 lakh 34,000 crore rupees, close to 160 billion dollars, and net profit around 1 lakh 13,000 crore rupees, roughly $12 billion, and employs over 1.15 million people across more than 100 countries, and 26 publicly listed Tata companies with a combined market value north of $300 billion. So inside that empire, TCS alone generates close to 2,67,000 crore rupees in revenue and roughly 49,000 crore rupees in profit. with a market value of around 7 lakh 80,000 crore rupees, making it on its own one of the most valuable companies in Asia. Tata Motors, powered largely by Jaguar Land Rover, brings it over 4 lakh crore rupees in revenue. Tata Steel carries a market value of roughly 2 lakh 47,000 crore rupees, and that's before counting Titan, Tata Power, Tata Consumer, Indian Hotels, which runs the Taj brand, Voltus, and dozens more. From 21,000 rupees to in 1868 to this in 180 uh, in 158 years, across five generations of leadership, four of them family and one of them not. This brings us to the next part, that is what this story actually teaches you about money and business. So, what's the takeaway? If you're someone trying to build wealth, run a business, or just understand how serious money compounds over time, um, you need to know about this. So, first, time horizon is everything. Steel, power, semiconductors. Tata's biggest bets across 158 years all share one trait. They take decisions to pay off, and the group kept funding them across multiple generations of leadership. Most people give up on an investment or a business idea after 2 or 3 rough years. Tata's pattern is closer to 2 or 3 rough decades. Second is structure your ownership before you scale. So, the brand subscription scheme, charging every group company a fee just to use the Tata name, sounds small, but it's a masterclass in recognizing that a brand, an IP, a name, is itself a financial asset that can be structured to generate recurring income. Third is even legends fail, and the failure is often about positioning, not product. The Tata Nano had a beautiful, compassionate origin story and solid engineering, and it failed because of how it was marketed. Whether you're picking stocks, building a startup, or creating content, the product is good is never the whole story. Coming to fourth, a crisis is when trust compounds fastest. So, Ratan Tata's refusal to lay off staff in 2008 wasn't just an HR decision. Over time, it became part of why Tata as a brand carries a trust premium, one that shows up in customer loyalty, employee retention, and even in how investors value the stock. And fifth, maybe the biggest one, how you structure ownership determines who actually benefits from growth. So the Tata Trust structure means a huge share of 158 years of compounding doesn't sit in one family's bank account. It sits in hospitals, research institutes, and scholarships. Whether or not that's the model you'd choose for your own business, it's proof that who owns the company and who runs the company can be completely different questions, and the answer shapes everything downstream. And this brings us to the final thing, like outro, or else we can say that the 21,000 rupees, 5 generations, a founder who never saw three of his four dreams come true, a 53-year chairman, an insult that turned into a $2.3 billion acquisition, a care built from compassion that became a marketing case study, and an ownership structure so unusual that most powerful business family in India barely shows up on a rich list. That's the Tata story. Not as a fairy tale, but as 158 years of decisions, some brilliant, some flawed, almost all of them long term. And If you found this useful, hit subscribe. And we are breaking down India's biggest business families and the financial lessons hidden inside their stories. One at a time, let us know in the comments which business house we should dig into next. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, and thank you for watching. And please do like, share, subscribe, and comment. And yeah, happy livings and Tata, bye bye.